During Tesla's last earnings call, Elon's response to the question about the $25,000 car was kind of an interesting one, and it kind of changed my perspective on how Tesla viewed that vehicle, and the news about it might be somewhat depressing, but I think getting expectations in the right way is important. So basically, on the call, someone was asking about how the development of the $25,000 car was going, and if they have any updates on this compact model, and Elon's response was basically, they're not currently working on it at all, and that the question is kind of inherently wrong. I will mention he did briefly say, like, yeah, one day we'll probably do it, we might do it at some point, but it was very dismissive, and it wasn't really him being very excited about it, and the wording he chose of specifically saying the question is wrong really was thought-provoking to me, because I immediately go back to the question and realize that we're all thinking of accelerating the transition to sustainable energy fairly differently from what Tesla is imagining, because they are very convinced that they are going to solve full self-driving, or at least get it safer than a human later this year. And Elon basically elaborated in his response that once you figure out self-driving, he said the important question to ask is the vehicle autonomous? And once it's autonomous, there will essentially be a substantial drop in cost per mile. For everyday people, you will just be able to take robo-taxis wherever you need to go, and it will be fundamentally cheaper than car ownership. Elon said by a factor of 4 or 5 times cheaper than what current cheap cars cost people. So his response there made me think that their mindset of just making more and more EVs and then making more affordable EVs and letting the price drop lower and lower and lower to the point that everyone is buying electric vehicles and then we all just have our own fun EVs to drive around in. I don't think that's what Tesla thinks is going to happen. It doesn't really matter what I predict, because I'm obviously a little bit more skeptical on their self-driving timelines, and I see all of these edge cases and single issues that we could run into with robo-taxis when it comes to liability. I mean, yes, it'll be great that they can drive themselves around, but who's going to be in charge of charging them if they're going to be used more throughout the day? Someone needs to plug these things in. Also, someone needs to clean these things when messes are left behind. Also, technically, all Teslas right now don't have steer-by-wire technology, which means anybody who gets in a robo-taxi can technically override the vehicle at any point. And what is the due process for people abusing the system or vandalizing the equipment? What happens when there's a flat tire or someone spray paints over a camera, or any number of edge cases that I think will make robo-taxis a lot more complicated than Tesla thinks, but doesn't really matter what I'm skeptical of. If Tesla believes that they in the near future are going to solve autonomous driving and make it far safer than humans are, and then make a robo-taxi network where cars are able to drive people around, and they'll be able to do it for a fraction of the cost of gas vehicles or Ubers, or even someone driving a Tesla for Lyft or for Uber will be infinitely more expensive than just letting a vehicle drive itself around, which for, I think, inner-city travel will probably work fairly well. But he was trying to emphasize that it's not so much about building and selling a $25,000 electric car, it's more so just about getting the cost of transportation inherently lower and making best use of the EVs they have available to them. So it does fit their mission statement to solve self-driving, because currently all the Teslas we're buying, we drive to work or we get some groceries and come back home, and then whether we're working or at home, the car is sitting in parking lots, it's sitting in our garage and not being very useful. Whereas Elon is excited for a future where all of the EVs they're producing can replace the job of 4 or 5 gas cars instead of just one like we are today, because once it drives you to work, it can then go somewhere else and drive somebody else to their job, or let somebody else go to the park or run some errands. And the car is being far more useful because it's not going to be sitting waiting in parking lots or sitting in your garage all the time. That way they can replace more gas cars on the road and car ownership will just be less of a thing. I personally don't think that's going to happen because of all the edge cases with robo-taxis, and I think the main reason there's so much demand for the Cybertruck or the Model Y, or the reason pickup trucks and SUVs sell at such high volume, is because people want to use their vehicles for more than just transportation. It's also about moving cargo, or taking bikes, or taking equipment, or loading rock and loading gravel, or just all numbers of things you can imagine people use their SUVs and pickup trucks for. But if this is Tesla's mindset of how they're going to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy and how they're going to make transportation far more affordable, they really don't have to actually make and sell a $25,000 car. It's probably rightful for you to be skeptical of this ever happening, just for the fact that Tesla hardly ever has been able to really deliver on their base price that they've they've listed over the years. I remember watching Elon Musk on David Letterman talking about how the Model S was going to start at $49,000, and I was watching the Model 3 unveiling live when they said it would start at $35,000. And yes, there were a few range-limited, exceptions to this, where it was like, they did offer that one low-range Model S for a little while, and they did offer that off-menu Model 3 for a little bit, but yeah, the Model Y never hit $39,000, so let's try to be realistic about what Tesla unveils versus what they deliver. Yes, it's important to acknowledge that typically what they deliver ends up being better in many aspects. It ends up having better range, better acceleration, more practicality, but simultaneously, it hardly ever costs what Tesla says it was going to cost. And if part of your excuse for that is, well, there's been a lot of inflation, so you got to account for that, yeah, there will probably be more inflation in future years. And if Elon is saying they're not working on the compact car now, I don't think that means it's going to launch later this year. As he said, no new models, as well as I don't even think we're gonna get an unveiling anytime soon, because it usually takes a year or more to go from, here's the prototype and here's when we start seeing it on city streets. Tesla has so much demand already with their already expensive vehicles. Seriously, like their cheapest car you can buy right now is $45,000. We're talking about shaving off another $20,000 to get a 25K Tesla, and already most of the models they're offering are backordered between 6 and 18 months. Can you imagine the backorder? Can you imagine the insane demand Tesla would see if they actually started offering a $25,000 model? I'm just trying to tell you, they don't have the production capacity for it, and I don't think they're going to for a long, long time. I actually think there's still a lot of room for price improvement on their current existing models. So if your thought process is, well, demand will start slumping once people stop wanting to pay, $60,000 for a Model Y or $50,000 or more for a Model 3. Yeah, once demand starts slumping, it's probably going to be easier for Tesla to just start reducing pricing on their existing models, because they already have some of the healthiest margins in the industry. They can 30% per vehicle. They can easily and comfortably afford to go lower on what they're currently offering. They just don't, because the demand is off the charts. But once the chip shortage is more figured out and there's more fabrication plants built, I'm sure we could see Model 3 and Model Y prices drop back down again. Maybe we'll see the Model 3 hit $35,000. Maybe see Model Y get closer to $50,000 again. But then we're gonna have a whole nother wave of demand, because I'm thinking it's pretty likely for Tesla's average selling price to be over $50,000 throughout all of 2022, and they're probably gonna deliver over 1.5 million vehicles this year. So every time there's a price reduction, your addressable market increases, your demand increases, and it's gonna take years and years and years before Tesla is actually able to catch up on this demand, lower prices enough so they can start, selling vehicles by 5 million a year, 6 million a year. And I think even if the Model 3 costs $35,000, and maybe they get it lower over time to $32,000, keeping in mind this will be battling against inflation, so that's not going to be something we see next year or probably even the year after that. They're simultaneously going to be trying to improve their full self-driving software as much as possible. And because Elon answered this question by saying it's the wrong thing to be asking, I'm personally guessing they might start rolling out robo-taxis in certain jurisdictions well before Tesla needs to price a vehicle at $25,000 in order to increase their overall deliveries. Because I think for the foreseeable future, with vehicles as expensive as they are, Tesla's not going to have a slump of demand, and even if they do, we've got a long ways to go before 25K is what Tesla needs to continue growing their production capacity. And given the average price of new cars in the United States have already risen past 45,000 US dollars, and I'm sure inflation will continue to rise the prices of everything, the concept of Tesla actually making a $25,000 car someday is getting harder and harder for my mind to grasp. I could actually see it being more likely that by 2030 or later, Tesla is just like, actually, if you want to have a cheap cost of ownership, just take robo-taxis everywhere. And they're trying to flood those in the market. They may not be legal everywhere, so it's still technically level 4, but the cost savings will be real and the safety will be legit. So again, I'm not agreeing with Elon that self-driving is going to be safer than a human later this year, but I definitely think it might be safer than a human before Tesla releases a $25,000 car. Maybe leave that to the legacy automakers, right? Like GM or Toyota or Hyundai, they're going to be probably carrying a lot of debt and they're going to be bailed out by their governments. So they're going to be able to sell a $25,000 EV or even a $20,000 electric vehicle with decent range, but I think Tesla's brand power has kind of separated them a little bit. Obviously, because the demand has caught them off guard. Model 3 and Model Y are breaking all of the charts in terms of luxury vehicle sales because there's so many people out there, including myself, that are willing to make the Tesla stretch because we're so excited about autopilot and supercharging and Tesla's emphasis on software and how they design their interiors and their screens so much differently from everybody else. It's brought out a new demographic of the automotive market that is like, yeah, I've never spent more than $3,000 on a car in my life, but because Teslas are so cool and they're almost more of a tech product than they are a car, I'm gonna spend the extra money. I'm gonna blow 50 grand or 60 grand on this thing because it's worth it to me. I think Tesla's brand power is going to prevent them from needing to ever lower the price to continue scaling their deliveries over the years. Whereas other companies like GM and whether or not the Bolt keeps going, if they make cheaper versions, or Ford making more compact vehicles, or a Chevy Aveo that's all electric or something, those maybe, yeah, I could see hitting 25,000 or less within the next decade because they don't have as much brand power as Tesla does. They don't have the supercharging, they don't have the full self-driving software, they don't have autopilot, and the demand will not be as crazy high. So these legacy automakers, I think, will continue to brag about how affordable their EVs are, but Tesla will continue to dominate because even though they cost more than the competition, they're still going to be worth it to the majority of people. They'll get loans or they'll save up a little bit more because at the end of the day, we're noticing a lot of consumers now don't just want an electric vehicle, they want a Tesla because that's different. It separates itself from the rest of the market. As long as we've got this powerful brand power, and who knows what kind of demand Tesla would see if they drop the price another $10,000 off all of their current existing models. But we're gonna have back orders for a while, and demand is not slowing down anytime soon, so that's why I just want to get it in everyone's heads that the $25,000 Tesla might not ever happen. I hope I'm wrong about that, because obviously if there was one available right now, I would totally buy it. We have enough in the Tesla fund for it, but just trying to keep expectations realistic, and I'm just looking at how the market is responding to already expensive Teslas, and I'm just saying, I don't think it's gonna happen. I think we'll probably have robo-taxis before Tesla releases a new vehicle that cheap. If you disagree, or you think that the market is gonna change, feel free to let me know what you're thinking down below. And of course, thank you to everyone supporting me on Patreon via the Tesla Fund and helping me afford a Tesla we'll be buying later this year. And everyone just watching, that seriously helps a ton too. Take care, have a great day.